every time I get an introduction, I always have to pause for a minute and be a little bit grateful because there was a time in my life where when I went to shake somebody's hand, I didn't have anything after the name. My husband had passed away from ALS. My mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer. My finances had been leveled. My health had been out of control. I had gained 200 pounds, and all of that due to caretaking. So the identity that I had built about being a wife, a business owner, a high achieving, performance based professional, it was gone. It felt like my entire life had burned to the ground. And so sitting there kind of in the ashes, uh, you get this kind of experience of what's next? What do I do? How do I do it? But I had a kind of secret weapon, a superpower. When everything was collapsing, I could still imagine that I wanted to create something on the other side. I just didn't have a familiar path or the guideposts from my life to whatever it was. And so I did what 20 years of researching and teaching creative intelligence, I relied on that to do my reset. And I think as founders, C-suite owners, C-suite people, entrepreneurs, you've all had that moment where you're like, I can start to picture it, but the route to get there doesn't seem that clear. And so hopefully today you'll kind of see the areas that might be draining you or might be kind of stopping that really creative idea thinking, or it might give you a little bit of comfort when you know that you're just kind of sitting in absolute uncertainty. So that's what we're going to start with today. Let me get my slides up and running. Oop. Okay, there we go. All right. So, um, yeah, as Linda said, you might be building something that doesn't exist yet. You might be It might be a business model, and there's nothing you're going to rely on from maybe past experience or stuff like that. I think of it might be the next life version. Maybe you've gone through divorce, or you're getting married, or your kids are leaving the nest, or it's the next rotation. You've kind of retired, and you're thinking of what you want to do next. Okay. So the one thing that's kind of overall in any of that is the problem is to create something that doesn't exist yet, you have to challenge the old ways you've been operating. You have to challenge the ways in which you've been thinking and the ways in which you've been looking at the world. We get very comfortable, especially as we get a little bit older, of kind of our routines and the ways that we think. And so after a lifetime of doing that, how do you do the reset? And so for me, it was losing the tight grip enough to change my perception on my current situation, which wasn't very fun at that certain period of time, and start creating forward with a different type of freedom and self-agency. What I think of kind of is like a car, we have our wheels, and how do we keep our wheels turning even when we don't know necessarily the route we're going to take our car? So, now this is going to be an interactive kind of thing. So I can't see the chat, but Linda's going to help me out on that. Um, if you've got questions, write them down. We'll talk about them in the end. I'd love to hear them. And also, I'm going to ask you things to think about while we go along, and I share different areas that might kind of change where you're thinking or what you're thinking about the overall spectrum of your life. Okay. So, um, so let me, um, so let's try that out first. Let me just ask you one thing. What happens when the next level can't be derived from the last one? Drop in the chat one word or phrase. What does building something that doesn't exist look like for you right now? Okay. All right, let's get started. So for me, when I think of that, I think of an originator. right? We're coming out of nowhere. Let's define it clearly. An originator basically conceives, initiates new concepts, frameworks. Maybe it's a venture or path. They act from internal authority rather than maybe getting kind of shaped by external instruction. They make decisions based on vision and discernment rather than imitation or greed. They might look to outside voices, but they're not guided and steered by those outside voices. And they generate forward motion even when it's ambiguous or it's stalled or it's uncertain, right? At the core, an originator operates from self authorship. So, how many of you are doing that right now? And does it feel kind of messy and tired or weighted, or maybe it feels a little scattered? And so that's something I think that a lot of entrepreneurs have to deal with is that we are doing this, but we don't have kind of the understructure to go, oh, this is where I'm at in this process. This is what might make it feel a little less scary to be doing something so unknown and so new. So when I think of originator, right, I think of certain people like Oprah Winfrey or Sarah Blakely, who turned $5,000 into Spanx, right? Being the youngest self-made female billionaire. Brene Brown, who made vulnerability a leadership strength, right? They were doing something that wasn't done. They went off the beaten path, right? And so who can you think of, either famous or somebody in your own life that you think of as an originator? What are the qualities that they have that really you go, wow, they know where they're walking their own path. They are truly authentic. They're truly doing their thing. I love these people. I love looking at these as great, powerful women because they stopped waiting for permission and started creating, right? The curious things is we don't often recognize when we're not being original, when we're kind of being steered by something that we don't even recognize that we could step outside the box to challenge. Okay. So why do we want to be this on the kind of bigger level? So LinkedIn, the fastest growing skill set is creative solving in 2025. Creative thinking ranks fourth for World Economic Forum. And then, of course, how crazy is it? Amazing crazy and also scary crazy is it with how AI is changing our landscape. So, one of the things that has been known, though, is origination is the irreplaceable human capacity. It can't be outsourced, it can't be replicated, and it can't be automated. So, once you start to really understand that, it becomes super powerful. Okay, so what are some of the things it takes to be an originator? Okay. Obviously, desire. And most of you, I think, when you're working in your businesses and stuff like that, you have that intrinsic desire to challenge the status quo, or you envision what you could do next, and you're really got the commitment to follow through with it. The other thing you need is an infrastructure, right? When you talk about resilience, the studies show the most resilient people tend to have support systems. I think of leadership Global as an amazing support system, right? And so it's a support system, the resources, strategic partnerships. It might be family or friends. It's One of the things what I found was I had lost a lot of my infrastructure, my support system in that one hard period of my life. And what I relied on as an infrastructure was my creativity, my creative process, my creative intelligence. And so when we think of creativity, here's the thing. How many people here go, oh, wait, that's not something I do, or I'm not creative. I don't have a good imagination, right? You automatically opt out of being creative. But creativity is what most leaders don't realize they need to cultivate, and it's a skill set that they can tap into. They also, it's something that how they create the environments for others to do the same. Okay, so we're going to talk about real leadership challenge nobody talks about. So when you think of energy, when you think of how you're kind of balancing work life stuff, right? It's not that you're lacking ambition or strategy or you're capable, obviously. What it is that work gets about 70% of your time and your focus, and maybe family gets 20, and your self-care gets about whatever's left, right? And the stakes are higher because you're not just managing your career, you're an example for those people who are coming after you. That's one of the things that originators do. They are an example. Um, so when you think of that originator in your life that I asked you for, you think about the fact that they're an example for you, right? So in the chat, which category, work, family, self, feels like it's draining the most energy right now for you? Is there a specific one where you're like, that's kind of out of sync? Or maybe it's a little wiry and you want it to grow and you don't know how yet. Okay. Um, Here's the thing. What happens when your energy is misaligned? Let me see if this sounds familiar. You feel like there's something off, even if you work harder than ever, right? Or maybe if it's family, you're there physically, but maybe you don't have the bandwidth to really be there as the version of yourself that you really want them to experience. Or maybe it's your body, maybe it's yourself, maybe it's your self-care, right? So this is not time management, it's not boundary problem, it's energy. It's the way you create, you don't have the energy for anymore, right? So it's not something you can optimize your way out of. You need to redistribute how your energy works. And that means having an awareness of how your energy works and where it goes. Okay. So for me, I discovered it in the worst part of my life was that my creative intelligence helped me with my identity and my purpose, which had completely changed. And they changed throughout our lives. I'm definitely not the person I was when I was a college student. I'm not the person I was when I was a wife. And I'm not the person I was a year ago, right? So my identity and purpose changed, but the one thing that is always constant is you're always making choices. You are always creating, right? You might be intentional and aware of it, or you might be going rogue on it. Okay. That is why I created the Creative Intelligence Operating System. So you could be more aware of those things. So um, I kind of wanted to talk about where creative intelligence sits within your leadership stack so that you're not confused. Is it human design? Is it project management? Think of creative intelligence as kind of the overall umbrella, and you get to use strategy frameworks and execution tools, and they integrate with those, right? It's not something that conflicts with it. So if you're using how you operate, how you know how to execute stuff, this is just a bigger umbrella to show you that incorporates those tools. So let's actually talk about creativity. So how many people, just raise your hands, how many people here think that they're super creative? I've got two. So we've got two people. So what happens is, remember when you were a kid? Did you think, raise your hand if you thought you were kind of more creative when you were a kid? More people? Yeah. Okay. So creativity is just energy. If we were talking to the physics professor, right, it is just the potential to work. It is just the potential to create. So that means your imagination, your curiosity, and play. It's not actually doing something, it's potential. And we all have that potential, right? And here's the thing, you're already creating. How many people here are overthinkers? Yeah, yeah. That's imagination gone rogue, right? So you're very imaginative. It's just maybe being guided in the wrong direction. Okay. Um, how many people get super invested and go down the rabbit hole on something, right? That's your curiosity, right? I think one of the harder things for us to do is play. When we grow up, we get to do adult play. And so, what I would say is, how can we incorporate those things into other moments of our lives? So, creativity is not a talent, it's energy you learn to access. And unfortunately, the older we get, the more we've been told, well, it's painting or it's music or it's brainstorming sessions. Uh, and so our scope narrows on how we think and use and utilize creativity. So it's how you access better thinking when the stakes are high, when the path is unclear, when there's no playbook to follow. Um, gonna get, uh, but basically, when we're older, we get told a bunch of this is right, this is wrong. We make a lot of assumptions, and our conditions for accessing our creativity get a little wonky. So I'm going to talk about four different conditions so you can kind of understand how it narrows. And I actually have a free gift for you guys for Leadership Global today. It's a handout that has actually 20 conditions on how you can better access your creative energy. Okay. So the first one I want to talk about is psychological safety. Okay. Um, how many times have you been scared to voice an idea? How many times are you thinking that it's not the right time or it's something where you don't feel safe enough to be creative, right? That would be one of the things. So when you remove the pressure of being creative, you open up that door. And sometimes it's how we're treating our employees or our family and stuff like that, that limits how we're creative in our discussions. Okay. A big one, and this was for me, is body state. How many times have you run yourself down completely and you have no idea what you're going to do next? Your brain is gone, right? So if creativity is energy, your body's the conduit that helps you work it. So if you're not sleeping or if you're in constant tension, or maybe, and this is really big for a lot of C-suite people, we're really good at the adrenaline. Have you ever taken a vacation and you're more stressed out on vacation than you are when you're at work, right? Our adrenaline starts pumping and it actually limits how we access our creative energy. So our body becomes super important. And then identity belief. Again, when I said raise your hands if you thought you were creative, only two people thought that they were creative. So basically, we've assigned creativity to a certain group of people. And because that we're outside of that group of people, we no longer can access our creativity, which is crazy because I've got to be honest, my CPA is probably the most creative person with numbers I've ever seen in my entire life. He gets a number that is like nothing I have ever seen with any of my other CPAs. So he's super creative. He's just not realizing that that's creativity, right? And then sometimes it's about permission. We think that we have to be a certain way at a certain time. When my husband died and things were really rough, or even when we were going through his ALS, a lot of people were kind of shocked because we would joke around in crazy ways. We would be super playful, and they thought this is such a serious thing. When my mother was dying, I snuck a her dog in and we took silly selfies and we just goofed around. And a lot of people would be like, this is a serious occasion. And so it's changing up the timing and the permission to be, you know what, you can be creative. You can tap into that energy at any moment. And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. So let's talk about creative intelligence. How do we unlock that? So, creative intelligence is basically awareness. If you think of creativity as energy and the creative process is the ecosystem that helps you kind of define where you're at with your energy and then focus it. So if you think about it, you have IQ that operates in the known, you have EQ that operates in the felt, and then you have creative intelligence that operates in emerging, what you're actually creating. So it's the difference between reacting to your life and authoring it. Okay. So I'm gonna actually, because of time, we're gonna skip ahead. So the first thing we're gonna talk about is the five areas. Okay. So you have form, you have inquiry, you have relationships, emotions, and source. Now, a lot of human design models, there's a spire model. A lot of things have been based around this. But if you look at these five areas, which we're going to go through in a moment, they actually pinpoint every area of your life that if you're really kind of intentional with, actually makes you a more content, happier, fulfilling life, and it helps you move forward. Okay. Um, so, so let's talk about form. I always say that this is, if you can touch it and not get in trouble for it, it's probably your form. So your body, your house, your car, it might be, um, sorry. So it's basically anything physical. So it is the output side of things, right? So it might be the end of the project. This is the result of. It might be the structure that you go through to do that. It is the structures and containers. Okay. Then you have inquiry. This is super important. It's what you pay attention to. It might be that you don't like dealing with finances, and so you ignore it, right? That gets that spoke of that wheel that we want to be turning in the forward direction kind of out of alignment. Okay. So this is the lens you use. It's your inner dialogue. It's the stories you tell about what's possible. It's what you're curious about. Okay. Uh, and then you have relationships. Uh, so this is relationship with self. It's how you show up for yourself, how you show up for others. It could be how you show up when it comes to your body. It's the field that you create with people. Okay. So again, I'm not a relationship coach. I'm not a psychologist. What I'm talking about is how you're creating who you are and how you do it. Right. So I'm not going through your back history. I'm talking about your future stuff. So, and then you have your emotions. Oh, your source. Yes. So this is your origin point. Now, if it's a company, it might be your values. It might be your identity. It is connected. It is the thing that keeps the why of why you're going forward in the first place. Why are you here? It might be your spirituality, your integrity. It is the start point of everything for you. And it changes dependent on if it's for your business, if it's for you, or it might be a through line for all of them. It's your origin point with your family. So, emotions. So, here's where we get pretty interesting because a lot of times what we do is we either ignore them, push them down, try to fix them, but when you're creating something, they need to be actionable intel. They need to tell you as a data point what is out of sync with what you're creating. Okay. So it doesn't mean that we're meaning making out of them. It means that we are starting to use them as a flare to go, this is a moment to pause. So if we look at the whole, I'm going to start to go through all of them. And I'm actually going to scooch back to the first one. So I'm going to give you examples. So after my husband died, I was over 200 pounds and I knew that my end goal, I envisioned myself being healthy, skinny, all buff girl again, super, all of that. That's great. But my relationship with the gym and being around people, I would have panic attacks. So my emotions would go out of control. So me going 45 minutes to the gym was a painful experience. Not to mention me going to the gym for 45 minutes. How many people have worked out for maybe like 2 or 3 weeks and then we're like, I hate this. My brain is like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. Right. So we're just positively reinforcing that we don't like it. So what I did then was go, well, I'm answering the wrong question about how I get to that thing that I imagine I want as my best self. And so instead, I started to get curious about what was actually not working right. And that was, again, my relationship to the gym, my consistency with the gym, my emotions going out of sort. So it wasn't my form that was off. It was my relationships and so I needed to change the questions that I was asking. And so what I started to do was go to the gym 3 times a week for 10 minutes. And I got curious on who was here. I'd make up stories in my head about their lives, or I'd start to look at the um, the vibes of the gym. It was I have a mid-century modern gym, super bougie. So I would start to look and see how much I liked the gym, right? And so the longer that I started doing that, the more the days in which I couldn't actually make that regular schedule, my brain was like, wait a minute, it feels weird not to be at the gym. So I had to build the consistency muscle before I built the I'm going to go work out and run a marathon muscle. So it's changing the perspective and the look of what I was going after to still get the same results. That's creative thinking. So if you can kind of think about it, it's almost like a wheel with these 5 things. And if a spoke is off, it's going to go look, and the rest of the areas help you get back on track. Okay, so if you can think about it, is there an area, maybe it's your body, maybe it's your relationship with your body, maybe it's you don't feel curious anywhere right now. Is there something that's screaming out when you look at these 5 areas that you're like, this is not quite it? Okay, so is there an area where you need growth, change, or it's dragging right now? Or maybe it's an area where you're like, I'm ready to expand. Okay. So, example, form, my body and my schedule are a mess. Or maybe it's inquiry. I am asking the wrong questions on what I want to create. Okay. Or a big one for a lot of women leaders is I have a huge imposter syndrome. I grit and bear it, right? So again, I'm not a psychologist. I'm an originator. I'm a creator. So I look at emotions or relationships on how to create, not to diagnose. Okay. So I was going to go over the 9 areas, but we don't have time. So I'm going to look at 2 areas of the creative process. And they're biggies, especially for us. And it's kind of cool because it's almost roping into the Leadership Global's conversation next week. But let me skip down to those slides. Actionable pauses. And there's been conversation about actionable pauses, but I want you to really think about that. A pause is not a stop, it's a creation of a space, right? And so it is one of the very strongest things you can do to start creating. And so I'm going to talk about these. You've got the reset pause is the way that so we've all got the text message or the email that we want to respond to right away and we want to burn the house down kind of thing. So we've actually done a reset pause before, probably because we waited 24 hours, right? So it's something where you're putting the stop on your action immediately, right? You don't send the email. You give yourself time to come back down to your baseline and you start choosing to respond from authorship instead of reacting, right? Or maybe it's the redirect pause. I call this the orange light. It's not like a red light where we have to stop. It's the orange light. So the orange light, your imagination is taking the wheel and it's not serving you in your highest interest, right? Overthinking is imagination. It's just pointed the wrong direction. You notice the story of your mind spinning and you need to interrupt it. And so you consciously choose a different question or image to focus on. You have the rest pause. Your system's depleted. You keep pushing, but the returns are dropping. A true rest pause is not working from a prettier location. You step away long enough that your body and emotion and mind reset. You put real boundaries around emails, messages, metrics. Originator treats rest as a creative infrastructure, not a guilty luxury. And then we have the liminal pause. This is usually something that maybe you didn't intentionally create. It's not necessarily an action, it's something you fell into. So that would be an example is when my husband passed. Something significant has ended or shifted. You no longer recognize yourself or your life, or the next version hasn't formed. The old version has dissolved, but the new one hasn't crystallized, and the gap is where you can architect a different way of living, leading, and loving. Okay. The problem is often what we do is we assign the past onto that nice little space, and we don't create from it in the way that we could. Or the future is so huge and daunting that again we look at that liminal pause as a stressful space instead of an opportunity. And then you have an initiating pause. You're about to begin. Artists do this every day. We put the canvas out, we set up our materials, or maybe it's you're getting ready for a workshop and you're ready and setting everything up. It's how you're about to begin. It's the moment before your morning routine or before you start your presentation or you design a new offer. You're intentionally arranging your internal and external state so you can create from authorship instead of autopilot. This is where you align your form, inquiry, emotions, and source all before you begin so that you feel comfortable with the next step you're creating. These pauses are not breaks in the work, they are the work. Okay? So that would be one part of the creative process. The other one that I'm going to talk about really swiftly is reframing reality. Okay? So how many of you have done the exercise of fact or fiction, right? Where you're basically trying to decide what is facts and what are things that we have assumed. What we talk about when we're dealing with creative intelligence is we call them perceptual or conceptual, okay? Because facts make them very solid. Perceptual calls out that they change depending on the point of view of what you're looking at. So if you hold a coffee cup right up in front of you, you're looking at it and it's real. It looks like that. But if you turn that coffee cup and put it in your lap, it's still the same coffee cup. It just looks different. Both of them are facts. You're just looking at them from a different way, right? So there are facts that are solid. They just can turn around in different ways in which you're perceiving them. And then you have conceptual fiction, right? This is your imagination, or it's the assumptions we make, the things we've inherited, the stuff we don't question, or it's what we've invented out of our own brain, the overthinking. And so when we look at what we have in front of us, our perceptual, and think of all the different ways in which we can change the way we're looking, and then we look at the conceptual, those are two powerful ways of completely changing your reality, even in the toughest circumstances. The problem is usually we don't challenge the perceptual and we let the conceptual go wild, and then we make judgments between those two instead of realizing we have ownership of both. Okay. 48-hour experiment. Here we go. So, where is your creative access the strongest? Okay, I have my PDF you can download when you go to my website. I'll put it in the chat. Download it, take a look and see where you're really doing good and where you're limiting your creative access, where your energy is not quite as expansive as it possibly could be. Where your ideas and energy being limited. So those 5 areas: form, spirituality, emotions, relationships. Where are you limiting how you're using your creativity? Okay. Where can you change up? And then what I want you to do over the next 48 hours or when you want to do it is pick that area and think about again how you're perceiving it and what type of pause you need for it. Okay. So maybe it's a relationship and you're really reactionary to it right now. Okay. So you know you need a red light pause. Or maybe you're in a liminal pause and the unknown is just kind of overwhelming you. Okay. So start to pick out what pause goes with what thing you're stuck on or you want to expand on. What area is kind of the one thing you want to focus your creative intention? And then pick out your pause. Oop, wrong direction. And then sit with it for a minute because you've now created the space for it with your pause and ask yourself how you're looking at it. Can I look at it differently? How am I viewing the facts now? And is there a different way to look at them? And how am I using my imagination? Is it good? Is it bad? Can I be a little bit more expansive in an area? What are the assumptions I'm making on it? What was it gifted to me, right? Throughout half my life, I was told I wasn't smart. It was an assumption that I wasn't smart. Okay. I rolled with that for a while until I realized that one, I was pretty darn smart because I just decided to be. But two, that could actually be a positive because then they underestimated what I could do and I could wiggle around that. So it wasn't necessarily a bad thing that I was labeled that way. It was actually, how do I make it an asset? Okay. So what does creative intelligence do for you? The unknown stops being a debilitating void and it starts being a creation engine. You can visualize things differently, your future possibilities change up. And the fact is that you can't create in the future and you can't create in the past. So this allows you to create right now. Okay. The next level isn't about doing more, it's about authoring it differently. Work doesn't take less of you. It gets more powerful version of you. Family doesn't lose you. They get you more present. And self stops being a someday and it starts being a source that fuels everything else.